Hello, world, and welcome to the Innovation Coaching Podcast. My name is Klaus Hostel, and with me, I have Paul Walsh. Paul, tell me how I can help.
Plus, thanks for inviting me onto your podcast. How can you help? Well, I think one way you could help, you could give me some advice how I could acquire more clients.
Aha, that sounds good. Well, just run faster. No, tell me a little bit more.
I'm working with an agency called Association Ambassador, and it focuses on running communications campaigns and creating what we call ambassador programs for associations. And associations tend to have a long sales cycle, so it takes a long time for them to make decisions. We add about one or two new clients every year, and we've been around just for 3 years. So I would say that the brand is not that strong. It's not we're not that well known, and we've done a lot of old-fashioned cold calling, setting up meetings, following up on meetings, and we've had a lot of really interested association professionals. We've met with a lot of interested association professionals. We've had a lot of great meetings, but certainly there's a difference between the sort of level of enthusiasm that we get on the meetings versus these actually turning into clients.
Mm-hmm. And why is that? I know that's a hard question to answer because there could be a million reasons, but why do you find that is? What are a couple of reasons that happens, that you have the connection, they take your call, you talk to them, there's enthusiasm, and then it doesn't turn into pounds immediately?
Yeah. I would say it's because although they like the idea and they like us, they don't have enough reason to trust us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I would say that combined with what is in it for them is not that strong. So if they hire us and it goes wrong, it could be very bad for them. If they hire us and it goes right, it might be just okay for them.
Got it. Okay.
So their incentives don't direct them to hire us.
Got it. Okay. And tell me a little bit more. And when you say their incentives don't direct them to hire us, that's a tough nut to crack. Tell me a little bit more about the work. What's a typical client look like? Let's say I'm a client. Who would I be and what would I buy? As an example. Doesn't have to be specific.
Yeah, you're a small association with, let's say, 5 employees, and you don't have a communications manager. So instead of having a communications manager, you hire us. What you get from us is an account manager who works for you for about 8 hours a week, is available for you for those 8 hours. And then that account manager will work with our team of freelancers to, first of all, they will define a strategy with you, but then they will give you all of the social media resources, the video, the design that you need, so that it's really like having a communications team instead of having, one communications manager, and it's at a lower cost. So they would buy that package from us.
Got it. Okay, this sounds interesting. So the first thing it reminds me of is my good old friend Jakob, who today runs a communications bureau. And some years back, he and a partner had a company where they did like this insourcing stuff where they would hire out people, and those people would come and work at the offices of the client, and then they would immediately be trained. They were like customer service. So instead of hiring a new customer service person, you would hire one of Jakob's people, and they would come out, they would be treated like an employee for a certain amount of hours, could be full-time, could be part-time, and they would land on the job with all the skills from day one instead of needing training because they were experienced. You could easily hire more because there were just more in that pool. And if you wanted to downsize again, they were easy to fire because you could stop the contract on, like, I think it was 2 weeks or a month's notice instead of giving them several months of pay without that. And they were insanely successful because they essentially said, what do you pay a new guy? Let's say you hire a new person. Oh, we pay them 3,000 euros a month pre-tax for the juniors. Okay, good. And then how long does it take before they're good? Well, it takes quite a bit of time and training and so on. Good. What if you could get them from day one and they were good? Okay, well, then that would be nice. And the cost wasn't a lot bigger for them because Jakob and the guys were taking all of the training risk and the scalability risk and the administration risk. And it was just a hard number. There was no, oh, you have to worry about insurance and you have to worry about vacations and off all this sort of stuff, right? And they were massively successful with a model that sounds pretty much like what you're doing.
Yeah.
So there is something for the model that definitely can work, right? Because if I understand you correctly, you're saying, hey, you're now big enough that you need a communications person, but you only need a third of one, right? You don't need a full-time one. We can offer you not just a third of one, but one that's multi-skilled, because it's not one person, it's one people that has multiple persons inside it, right?
Yeah. Because really what they would have to do is hire a communications manager, but that's not enough. The communications manager would then usually have to work with an agency.
Bingo, yeah.
And so we give you the 2-in-1.
And I guess when you talk to them, they say, wow, that sounds great.
Always.
Where does it go wrong? Where in the process? Is it because you're talking to the wrong people, or is it because they say it to you because they want to charm you, or they're intimidated, and then they go home and think, never that guy? Or like, where in the, I don't think that's the reason, but where does it go wrong? Where does it go from this enthusiasm, understanding the idea, to not buying?
Always in that meeting, I book a follow-up meeting. And then something changes, or there's a reason for postponing. And so I have about 20 prospects who are in this category who are still considering this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of over the people that I've met from September last year.
Got it. Okay. Do you know, have you talked with any of the ones that have said no, where you thought this is going to happen, then it didn't, and found out what it was?
No.
Okay. Do you have access to any of them? Are there any that you feel close enough to that you could reach out and say, hey, I totally accept that you didn't hire us. That's completely reasonable. I'd love to sit down and have a half-hour chat with you, or just 15 minutes about why. Have you done that?
We did it with one. See, that's the other thing. You can tell from the way that I'm telling the story that we're not often getting hard no's either. We're saying we get a lot of, well, it's just not the right time, but eventually we'll do it.
Sure. Okay. So let's assume that's true.
Yeah.
Then there are a couple of ways of dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
One is taking the advice of perhaps the best kind of business to business software as a service guru out there, a guy called Ulrik Leosko-Smith, Danish guy. And he says a lot of good stuff, but what he especially says is, if you structure every deal so it is unfair to you, you take all the risk, you take all the blame, they get it cheaply, and if they don't like it, they get money back, and they also underpay you, then it's a no-brainer for them. And if you can still make it work, then you explode.
Yeah.
And for every one of those, and that's what he says. Then the second part of that, which he doesn't say, but is kind of, it's kind of implicit, is that for every one of those you remove, the harder it is to get the deal, right?
Yeah.
If it's a reasonable price, it's a reasonable offer, it's reasonable risk, then it's like, yeah, okay. But if it's so reasonable, it's like nobody wants to bet money on a 50-50 coin flip.
Yeah.
And even if you ask people, what about a 60-40 coin flip?
Yeah.
Then they say no. 70-30 maybe. Where if you ask them, okay, so what if we flip it 10 times? Then that changes it completely. And I think maybe what you're up against here is that they want it. They're at 60-40, right? They don't want to close it down. They see the idea, they want it, but it's not sweet enough that they strike now.
Yeah, that's it.
Are there ways you could make it sweeter, the offer? Not the work, because that's probably great.
Yeah, I got it. We could give them a grace period for 1 month. So we get to, because one thing that I've said seems to work is that, you know, I've been on the other side of this, working for associations, and had agencies doing beautiful pitches to agencies can really get that part of it very well. And when we hired them, it didn't really match up to the level that we had based on the pitch, right?
Yeah.
And so I say that to them, and I say, we know that. So you don't, even though it seems like you're very interested now, you still don't actually know how good we are. And so just to give you peace of mind, we are more than happy to do 1 month, work for you for 1 month. And then you decide at the end of that 1 month, were you happy with what you got? If you weren't, we'll just part ways and we won't charge you. But if you are happy, then we'll go ahead for another 6 months.
Okay. And what have they said to that?
Just to remove the risk.
Yeah, because that's a possible way of doing it. What have they said to that?
I guess I haven't, now that I say this to you, I haven't pushed this hard enough. This was kind of like a recent idea that I haven't fully activated or kind of seen the potential yet.
In my old company, I hired a marketing manager at one point, our international marketing chief, and he came and said, "Hey, Klaus, we know each other. I've worked for a payment processor you had, and I'm now changing to a new job, and I want to work for you. And I'm so convinced I can do a good job that I want to be the highest paid in the company, but I want to work the first month for free. And if after that you don't see my value, then you just say thank you, and I say thank you, and it's been good. And if you do, then that salary, then I start at the highest salary in the company, and then we agree it's going to move up.
Yeah.
But I'm going to prove that it's worth it. So you get me for a month free. And if you don't like it, then that's fine. Then I'll learn stuff. We'll have fun."
Yeah.
And I hired him, and I said, "Of course, come on board. Let's do it." And of course I hired him because he was great.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't afraid of his value.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Quite the opposite, right? He was very confident of his value, but he also said, "I realize my value, but I understand that you don't yet. So I'm going to prove it to you."
Yeah.
And that's very different from being cheap, right? It's easy to compete or try to compete by being cheap, but here people don't want to buy cheap.
Yeah, you want to buy really good, but you're not really suggesting that that your value is lower by the price. You're just suggesting that you don't know. We understand that. So let's find out in the first month.
Yes. So that might be one thing, right? At least worth testing. Will it work? Who knows? But at least worth testing. What are other reasons that you think they say no? How can we else sweeten the offer?
I think, the fundamental reason is that it's not coming through a referral or it's not coming through brand awareness.
So there's that trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we've added testimonials and so on. We could do more to actually activate some referrals. But that doesn't really refer to the actual offer. We could probably add more to it. So this is, in a sense, okay, taking away the price part of it, which is a very good part to take away from the prospect's point of view. But we could add something to it as well. So to paint a picture of the first month, which would make it seem absolutely magical. And I think as well, what we could do a better job is to really define our process and our way of working very well. Like how we create a campaign, how we set up a campaign, every step of the process. So we can map out the milestones for the first month and show them this is what is going to happen. And by the end of the month, you're going to have this, and this. And then you're still free to decide if you want to go ahead or not.
So here's a thought, Paul, that may or may not resonate, but I think that one thing, sweetening the deal, that is definitely doable. Then we'll talk price in a moment, because of course that's also a factor. But I think there's also a thing that we're not addressing here. And that is that if I put on my association hat for a moment and I think, okay, here's the opportunity to get these guys in, they're great. But what if they eat up my time? What if I end in meetings with them? What if I have to micromanage? What if I have to approve? What if they don't know what they're doing? What if they ruin our brand? All these sorts of,
yeah.
Because one thing is, oh, I'll come work for free, right? That sweetens the you can test it out. But it's still saying, if somebody came and said, "I'll babysit Saga, your 6-year-old daughter, for free," yeah, but do I really? Like, it could be one way to go. If I trust them already, it's a great way to prove it, but it doesn't create trust.
Yeah.
The lowering the initial cost makes it easier to say yes, but it doesn't create trust. So these are two. So we're looking at, that's one way, but we also need to increase the trust.
Yeah.
Because you're asking them to let them take care of your baby. And I guess one way of doing that is to say, we'll come work with you for a month, we'll do it for free, but what we'll work on is not your main brand or main campaign. We're not going to risk the brand. We're going to do something that is a side thing or a small thing, something where you're willing to experiment.
Yeah.
Right? It's not taking the child and babysitting it.
It's something that if it doesn't work, there are enough fundamental consequences.
Yes.
For the organization.
Yes. It's not teaching my daughter to rock climb. It's playing jumping jacks with her on a playground. If it doesn't work, sure, she's had a bad half hour, but that's okay. Where if it's rock climbing, it doesn't work, then she's broken her hip.
Yep.
That it's working on something where whereas you say the risk is small, right? Because if you say, we'll do the work for free to show you what we're like and how we are to work with, and we'll do it where something where the risk is minimal. It also means the payoff will be minimal. It's not their mega awareness $1 billion campaign,
Yeah.
but that's okay because, as you said, it's long-term customers, it's long cycles. So it's about getting a foot in the door and becoming that trusted partner. And there it's better to say, I won't cook your wedding dinner,
Yeah.
but I'll cook dinner for when you're alone on a Tuesday afternoon and a bit sad. I'll come by and cook some ravioli. And if you like it, then we'll talk about the wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that doable, do you think?
Yeah, that's doable for sure.
Okay, because that might also open up a thing. Okay, then we have something on that, right? Then let's talk pricing for a moment. And to this, I hate how often I do it, but I find myself referencing my co-author Philip's favorite pricing joke. And the fact that he has a favorite pricing joke is because he's a pricing expert.
Mhm.
And that is about a barber who gets visited by a pricing expert. And the pricing expert says, you're really good. Have you considered doubling your prices? That would be good. And the barber says, oh no, I couldn't do that. I'd lose half my customers. I'm glad you didn't laugh out loud, but at least you can't see it, but Paul is smiling. Not a lot, but a little bit. And of course, the core of that joke is that losing half your customers sounds terrible, but at double the price, it's the same income, just with half the work. What would happen if you doubled your prices?
So I just went back to 7 clients and said, okay, from now on, this is the price, and you get the same. I think I'd lose all of them.
Good. So let's not do that. What if you went back to them and say, we're going to double our prices, but since you are existing clients and you helped us get here, we're going to stay with the same rates for you for the next year. And then after that, we're going to have slow bumps of 20% until you're paying the same as everybody else. So in 6 years, you're going to pay the same as everybody else, but you have a grace period. What would they say then?
No price increase for the first year.
Yeah, for the existing customers. For the new ones, you go out, right?
Fine. So no price increase for the rest of the year. And then from next year, we increase by 20% until you get up to our new rate.
Yeah. Or something like that, right? It doesn't have to be those specifics, but something like that where you say, you're inside, so you stay, and then it'll be a slow progress. But for everybody else, we're going to be more expensive. So when you see our prices outside the door, or when you hear about it, don't wonder that they're wild. It's because you're getting a special deal because we have a relationship and we don't want to pull the rug out under you, but you're going to hear us go out and pitch ourselves to new clients at double the price. Do you think they would feel more special or less special, or say, I don't care what weird shenanigans you're up to, Paul, as long as you do your work?
To be honest, they don't have so much interaction with each other. So I'm not, it certainly hasn't come up so far. I'm not sure how much it matters to them, how much we charge other people.
No, what I'm saying is that it would change what you charge. It's also a perception of what you're charging them.
Yes, yes. I think like that, I think it could.
Okay, I'm not saying we should go that way. I'm just saying, okay, so that's a possibility. Let's say we do that. What do you think would happen to your new business if you went out and pitched yourself at twice the price? Who are the people you would suddenly now seem appealing to from a price point, and who would no longer be interested in you from a price point? Because you lose somebody, of course. Like every time you move a division, you lose some people, but you also gain some who say, oh, they take that price. Oh, they're serious. And others say, oh, they take that price. Oh, they're not for me.
I think we might have lost or hurt ourselves on one or two by being too low.
Mm-hmm.
But then for others, they say we're convinced of the quality, we just don't have the money. So
yeah. Do you think it would push you into not believable territory if you doubled the price, or would it still be like, of course, no?
No, we're low now.
So here's the thing on price. Discounts are when you sell stuff like you do, which is expertise, right? It's not just, yes, there are others who do the same, but it's not just something anyone could do. It's not oranges. It's not lawn mowing.
Mhm.
Discounts are a tricky thing because discounts without a reason signal usually a drop in value.
Yeah.
Where discounts with a reason, if the reason is good, are a great way to signal value without actually charging.
Would you give me an example of a reason?
Yes, it's Belgian National Day. Or even better,
Yeah.
a classic way is consultants who are expensive, and they say for nonprofits, we have a separate price tag. Why do they have that?
Yeah.
Because they want their business. And there's nothing in the world that forces a consulting house that charges, let's say they charge 200 pounds an hour for their consultants. And then the association say, we can't afford that. No way in hell. And then they just don't work for associations. No problem. There's nothing that keeps them from going to an association and saying, hey, we'll gladly do the work for free for you because we're getting so much from others. But instead, what most of them say is, we'd like to do it for you at a lower price. And usually that's because they actually think that business is interesting, not interesting enough that they'll do it for free because nobody's stopping them, but still interesting enough that they like it. So they say, we have a price for businesses and one for nonprofits.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, the one for nonprofits is made so it fits the nonprofit budget.
Yeah.
And that's because pricing is tricky. Pricing equally is one way of doing it fairly, but pricing equitably or pricing like based on circumstances is another way of doing it fairly. It's like saying, hey, if you live in Madrid, you have less disposable income than if you live in London. So I'll do the coaching for cheaper money. And to some people, that's like, oh, but that's wrong. And others will say, wow, that makes sense.
I don't know if this is my own insecurity, but when we're having this conversation, the one thing that I'm thinking about is how do we increase the value?
Yes. And here we get to another fun thing. If we stay in the pricing a little bit, is value is entirely subjective. There's no objective value. That's the first thing to say, which means there's no objective price that's reasonable.
Yeah.
Pineapple is a great example. We even use it in the pricing. Right? Pineapple is at one point in Europe, pineapple had a price cost of what is the equivalent of about 15,000 US dollars today for one pineapple. Today, we put it in cans and send it to refugee camps because it's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
The pineapple hasn't changed. Same pineapple. In fact, it's much easier to get today than it was then, but nobody puts a pineapple on the table and says, this is the centerpiece of a luxury dinner. And it means that whatever you do, no matter who you are, what you do, you will basically you will be in one of 5 price ranges. There's the reasonable price. There's the price that doesn't really say anything, but it's reasonable. It's the apples that cost £2.50 for half a kilo, or it's the milk that cost this, or the lawyer that cost this, or the football ticket that cost this, that where you think, oh, that's reasonable, but you don't think anything about it. Then there's the cheap price, which is discount. There's a lot of money in discount. Ryanair, insanely profitable, very cheap. And that's because they're selling discount. You're not getting, they're basically saying anything we could remove that is nice for you in this world, we're taking it off that Ryanair flight. But you're also getting it cheaply, so it's fine. There's also premium, right? At the other end, if we're talking airlines, it's Emirates. Emirates is a nice airline, but it also is pricey. And if you're trying to sell Emirates quality at Ryanair prices, people don't believe you. And on the other hand, if you're trying to deliver Ryanair service at Emirates prices, you're going to go out of business pretty fast. But these 3 are all rational, reasonable prices: premium, discount, and normal. This is, in any industry, we have ranges, right? Then there's too cheap. There's the 20 pounds an hour lawyers. I don't want them taking care of my lawsuit, right? Or we're the 10 pounds an hour accountants. Just send us your stuff. Yeah, no. And the stuff that's too expensive. Oh, this is the 100 pounds a kilo orange. That's the unrealistic on the other end of the scale. But no matter who you are, you will fall into one of these 5 categories. The thing is that these categories only exist for people who understand what you're selling in the market you're in. If you're used to buying lawyers, then you'll know the difference between a 100 pound an hour lawyer and 150 and a 250, and you'll have a good idea of, oh, these guys are good with the French market and these guys are fast, or whatever it is. But if you've never hired a lawyer in your life, you'll have no idea how to spot the difference between a good lawyer, a bad lawyer, a good lawyer for you, and you won't know, is 300 pounds an hour? Is that high? Is it low? Instead, you'll look at it, what can you afford? And that means that if you are, let's say you are an association and you are constantly doing events, then you're constantly producing material, right? You're constantly hiring speakers, you're constantly running events. Then you'll have a pretty good idea. The people sitting with that, they'll have a pretty good idea of what does a venue cost? What does it cost to get a professional speaker from Ireland? What does it cost to do a folder or flyer? And what does SoMe advertising cost? Because they'll actually know. They'll be sophisticated buyers, right? Not because they sip rosé and quote Shakespeare, but because they understand the pricing and the market they're in. But if you have the same guys and they're looking for translating their website into professional Mandarin, and they see three options. One is they'll do it for 3,000, one will do it for 6,000, and one will do it for 12. They have no idea where these are on the scale. Like all of these could be actually incredibly cheap, or they could all be completely overpriced, or one could be discount, one could be, they have no idea. So then they only have these three things. They think, the 12 one is the premium, the 6 is reasonable, and the 3 is cheap.
Yeah.
Where in reality, all three might be completely off the charts, grotesque. And I had that, my uncle and aunt, many years ago, they were traveling with my two cousins. They were in Southeast Asia. They were, I think it was in Indonesia or in the Philippines, something like that. And they lived in this lovely hut, sort of like a jungle hut, a little bit into a forest. And every morning, this guy would come with these wonderful, huge banana breads, and he would sell them to them at a price of half of a Danish krone, which is basically nothing in British pounds, right? We're talking 1/15 of a pound. And they were so happy, and they talked with the guy, and he was fun and friendly, and they loved the bread, and they said, "Oh, this is so incredible." And then on the last day, they were there for a week. On the last day, they're woken up earlier than normal because there's a fist fight outside. And it's the guy, and he's getting beaten up by other guys. And they, of course, walk in, it's like, "What's going on?" And then one of the others says, "This guy has been ripping you off." So what do you mean? We've got this incredible banana bread for no money. At home, it would cost 20 or 40 times that. And they say, "Yeah, but he's selling at 10 times the normal price."
Yeah.
And he's not sharing his profits with us. He's hogging the golden goose customer that he's ripping off and not sharing with the community. And they were just stunned because to them, this was incredibly cheap, even if the guy was 10x overcharging them. Unsophisticated customers, right?
Yes.
So one of the first things to realize when you're looking at pricing is, are you selling to people who understand the market you're in and buying from that, or are you selling to people who don't? Because they're comparing with other things, right? What do they want instead of that part-time communications person? Do they want more chairs in their clubhouse, or do they want to reduce membership dues, or do they want a new lawyer? What else are they looking at for the same money? And how often do this sort of thing? Do they understand what you're up against, or do they just understand what you're up against?
Yeah. I would say they're fairly sophisticated.
Yeah. And that means that suddenly now the pricing, suddenly you can't just double your price without a massive value increase.
Yes.
But you might be able to do a value increase in a place where they don't understand the value. And when I say don't understand, it's not that it shouldn't be there, but it should be hard.
Where they're not sophisticated.
Yes, exactly. Because if you can give them, and the best part is if you can give them something that is to them incredibly valuable, but to you is very easy to do, then it's an easy way to make it easier for them to say yes, or to raise the price, or even both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I've found as somebody who does books, I do quite a bit of books, and one of the things is I know how to do every single step of the process with doing a book, from coming to the idea, to writing the stuff, to layout, to making it production ready, to sending it to the print. I can't print it physically. I don't know how to do that, but I know how to go from, I have an idea, to there's a book that's sent, the print file is sent to the publishing house, and I have a publishing partner I've worked with for 15 years, and finished books appear on my doorstep. I can do anything in that process. And when I meet authors who can't, people who either have written books or want to write books, then they say, "Oh, but I write." And I say, "Okay, but so what about layout?" "Oh, I have a layouter. He costs 3,000 euros. He's really good." I say, "Oh, okay. So do you like my books?" Yeah, your books are really nice." "Okay, well, I lay out them myself." "Oh, wow. So that's me saving 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
right? Because to them, layout is a huge thing. And to me, it's a small thing. It takes me a day to lay out a book. And usually the simple stuff takes less. But to them, it's big. And on the other hand, I have myself for quite a bit of time, getting a book on Amazon is still for me like, oh, how do you do that? What buttons do you? And then I talk to people and they're like, oh, but I do everything. So, okay, so can you help me upload it on Amazon? Because I don't know how to do that. I'd like to learn. Oh, no, I have a book producer who does that. Book producer charges £2,000. And what they essentially do is something that takes them 15 minutes if they know how. But if you don't know how, then you're in that space of, then you're an unsophisticated buyer because you just see the size of the problem.
The idea is not coming to me yet, but it's a good way of thinking about it.
And we're not saying we'll solve it here, but I'll give you a real world example that I just went through here last week because I've just launched a podcast. You're on the podcast, right? And the last times I've done podcasts, the first time I did it, I used something called SoundCloud to do distribution. Just upload it there, very simple. But if you didn't have SoundCloud, it was kind of problematic. So the second podcast I did, I wanted to be on Spotify, like the real podcast places, right? It should be serious this time and easier to distribute. But I didn't know how. And I luckily had a friend who said, oh, I'd like to get some experience in producing podcasts. So I'll be your producer for free. So I just sent him raw sound files. He did all the editing. He did all the show notes. He did all the uploading, the right places, creating all the accounts and that sort of thing. And I just put in my credit card for the payment. And that was really nice. But it also meant that when I was going to start the third one, I didn't know how to get a podcast on Spotify because I used to have a guy who did that. And I tried to hire somebody to do that. And I was willing to pay quite a lot of money for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was busy and I thought, okay, I'll give it a whirl myself. And it turned out it was incredibly easy. It was intuitive. It was easy. The software I'd been paying for that he'd been using was very, very simple.
Yeah.
And now I know how to do the whole process myself. And it means that the idea of paying somebody 100 euros to produce a podcast episode, well, I could still do that, but it wouldn't be for the upload part. It would be for the sound editing part, which I found is pretty dreary because now I know what is hard and what is not, where before to me, it was like this murky thing of hard. And now I know which part is to me actually valuable and which is not. And part of this is figuring out if you're selling to somebody, finding those spaces where they see it as a huge problem and you see it as a small one. That's where the value is, right? If you're paying 100 to get 100, doesn't help. If they're saying, we'll pay you well because it's hard, shitty work, then you're not winning. Where if they're paying you what they see is really hard, shitty work, and for you, it's fun or a walk in the park, that's where the value is. And that's where you can either make it easier for them to buy or easier to bring in a little bit more money. But you need to find the places where they think it's really hard and you think it's not. Because else you're just matching effort for effort.
Yeah.
And that's commodity pricing, right?
It's a good way to think about it.
Thank you.
A more strategic way.
At least I've found that it's a way of unlocking, finding those things that people, because we all have different things that are hard. There are things I will pay a lot of money for personally and also business-wise that others like, I would never pay for that. And then there are some things where I would never pay a single cent, usually because I know how to do it or I know people who know.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of my career in spaces where there were ideas, crazy ideas, great ideas, and they were all over, but nobody knew how to order a toilet, right? The heroes in the role-playing space where I come from were the producers because they actually got stuff done. Everybody wanted to be a designer. Everybody wanted to be a world builder. But if you came into a room and says, hey guys, I'll handle the money side and make sure we don't make a loss, and I'll order the toilets. They're like, you are a god in human form.
You're the guy, yeah.
And in other spaces where I now travel now, people are like, oh yeah, of course, finance, sales, all that sort of thing. Yeah, I'll take care of that. But I'm looking for ideas. You're looking for ideas? Yeah, if I could get somebody with good ideas, I'd pay good money. And I say, where have you been all my life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's finding that hard and finding that match. And that is harder when it's a very clear, when there's full transparency and everybody knows what the options are, that's harder. Because then you could still do it, but then you have to stand out in a way the others do, and then they'll just copy you, right? The first person who came up with like, ooh, you can on Uber, you can see where the car is. Well, the taxi company apps just copied that. And now that's no longer part of Uber, it's just part of a mobility app. So it's no longer something, it's no longer a differentiator. It's just making it better for everyone, which is good for the consumer, but not so good for Uber because they've lost that as a marketing tool because now everybody does it, right?
But it's inevitable that this will happen.
It is, unless it's stuff that you do that can't be copied, right? What is something you do that nobody else or very, very few other people in your industry do or in your space do?
They can't make regular videos and post them on LinkedIn
Got it.
about themselves. They can't speak directly themselves
Yeah. And why can't they?
because they're too insecure about how they sound and how they look, and they're afraid that they'll be perceived negatively by their peers.
Got it. So what if we for a moment forget all about what you're doing and say, this is a pain point. So you're saying part of it is they're worried about how they'll be perceived. They lack the confidence to do it. They're worried about experimenting.
Yeah.
That means that there might also be a thing that you say, not only do we come in as this external half an employee with several employee skills, but we also train you so that after a period of time, we will be, if you want us to, we will leave again.
Yeah.
You will not need us, right? We will do the thing, and while we're doing the thing, we will have you shadow us and we will teach you. So we will not only do the thing, we will also train you, should you want that, so that you can leave us, or so we can leave you. We're also happy to stay with you, that's fine. We like you and we like the work, but we prefer to make ourselves unnecessary.
Yeah.
Because that might be tapping into some value that they're saying, oh, okay, I like that, because it's tempting. The moment you bring on somebody, whether it's an employee or it's a service or a subscription or whatever it is, the nice thing is you can put it as a line item in your cost sheet and say, okay, we now pay $12 a month for Amazon web hosting or Netflix subscription or this employee. The tough thing is that now it's a line item and you're never getting rid of it. Where if you say, we have two packages. One is a package where we come in and help you solve stuff. And we also have the only slightly more expensive and therefore perceived as much better value, where we do that, plus we teach you, so we become unnecessary after a period of time.
Yeah, well, or it's just something else that they can do that they can't do now, which we complement with our service.
Also a good way of doing it.
Because they're kind of two separate things. Like there's a workshop that I do about overcoming the psychological barriers that are preventing you from being visible on social media. And I could explore that more, but I think it's a fun workshop. And if we have a secretary general who goes from zero to social media zero to social media hero, and then that's complemented by kind of a regular stream of content on that association's page, which they then amplify through their growing profile. And I think it's a very nice dynamic.
Yeah.
I think also you can see results quite quickly with something.
No, exactly. And I think there's a strength to that. One thing is how you position yourselves, but because you're selling two things, you're selling both hands and head.
Yeah.
If you're offering to upskill somebody, you're not selling hands, you're selling head. But if you're offering to do the work, you're selling the hands. And if you have both in you, then you have both of those kind of streams to tap, right?
See, it's such a no-brainer to me.
Right?
But everyone should be doing it. We should be like your friend. His agency.
With that, well, as we are slowly rounding off here and wrapping up, first, I want to thank you for coming to me with this, because one thing is sharing problems with anyone or challenges. That's tough. Sharing it with me, that takes courage. And sharing it with people listening out there, that's really nice, because you get to help other people who you've never met and might never meet. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
And the second part is I want you to take a moment and think about three things you take away from this. Three, and they could be insights or things you're going to try, or it could even be things you just disagree with completely. That's fine. But three takeaways that are going to stay with you, both for my sake, so I can learn, for your sake, so they can stick in your mind a bit better, and for all the people out there listening?
Removing the barriers that are preventing prospects from accepting our offer. I think we had a good discussion about that. And I think the idea about this kind of 1 month trial period to develop that further, and then look at other ways that we can build up trust in what we're doing by, for instance, focusing on an area that's not so critical to the organization, but a good way of testing what we provide. I think that this is all very helpful. The idea about pricing was very helpful as well. Not necessarily to go and double our fees for everybody overnight, but just to present it in terms of a comparison with what we're charging you clients versus what we're charging clients that we have at the moment, and aligning one with the other over a period of years. That's just a good way to ensure that you're actually developing a sustainable business. And number three, some of these ideas have been floating around in my mind anyway. And this exercise was a question of just making them more explicit, but it's quite rare in my day-to-day life that I actually have the time to focus on them. It's the difference between focusing on a business as opposed to working in the business. And so it's really like I really should do this every week. And so I really appreciate that you gave me the opportunity to take a step back from what I'm doing and develop some insights that I think will benefit my business.
Thank you for that. And I mean, a smart man would say, if you need a coach, you know where to find one, right? But with that said, right, and we can make fun of it because it's true, but it's also part of the fun, thank you, Paul, for coming with this. I really appreciate that. And to all of you out there, you have heard Paul Walsh and me, your host, Klaus Oster. Thank you for listening.